Like most people, I love snacks. But at the prices that are at the grocery store these days, I'd rather just make it myself for next to nothing. So today we'll be making Copycat Cheez-Its. Anybody who knows me knows I love copycatting some of my favorite recipes. If I can make it myself, I know I'm getting it cheaper and I know exactly what's going into it for ingredients. I've never really read the box of Cheez-Its to see what the ingredients are, but I'm sure it's a whole lot more than flour, butter, salt, cheddar cheese, and a little bit of ice water. And that's really all it's going to take. So follow along and we'll get this started. Okay, this is really simple, but it's a very specific order that we need to do this stuff. So I'm going to use 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. If you can find extra sharp, that's even better. I'm going to put in 4 tablespoons of softened butter. You don't want it to be hot and melted, but you do want it to be softened. If it was hot, it would start melting the cheese and make kind of a mess out of things. So 4 tablespoons of butter and 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay, and then what we're going to do is just kind of mix this all up. Once this is thoroughly mixed, we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now that we have the butter and cheese kind of incorporated, I'm going to slowly add 1 cup of flour. And I'm just going to throw a little in, start getting that mixed up with the cheese and butter. Add a little bit more. And this will be really dry and really crumbly. When we're done, we're going to slowly add in our water just to make it more into a dough that we can work with. So let me get all this flour worked in and save you from having to watch this. It's kind of boring. And I'll be right back. Okay, now that we got all of our flour kind of mixed in there, we're right back to what looks kind of like a mixture of flour and cheese. So, and this dough is going to be kind of lumpy. You're going to see the cheese in the dough. So now what we're going to do is, I have water that I had in the refrigerator, and I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of water, 1 at a time, and I'm going to slowly incorporate that into this dough. And the reason we want to use ice water or very cold water for this is because this is going to be kind of like a pastry dough. So also when we're done making this, we're going to let it rest in the refrigerator for an hour to get nice and cold. We want to work on this dough while it's cold, not when it's warm. So that's 2, 3, and I'll get the 4th one incorporated and I'll bring you back again and show you what the dough looks like. Alright, I finished blending everything with the fork and getting it all mixed up. And now I'm just kind of kneading it with my hands. And you want to do that until the bowl comes clean and what you're left with is a dough that's really not that sticky and doesn't fall apart. You'll know when you're there because it's a very crumbly dough that kind of crumbles and falls apart. But once you're at this point here where it's no longer falling apart, you're finished. So what I'm going to do with this dough is put it in the bowl, throw a cover over the top, and get it in the refrigerator for 1 hour. At the end of that hour, we'll come back and we'll make our crackers. Well, it's been an hour and I took the dough out of the fridge and it's nice and cold. and ready to work with. The other thing I did is, I'm sure the oven that I'm going to be using is our wood cook oven, so I can't really regulate the temperature the way you would an electric or a gas oven. But you want to preheat your oven at this point to 375 degrees. And I could only fit smaller pans in our oven. And the amount of dough I have, I'm sure once I have it rolled out, it's going to be too big for one pan. So in my case, I'm going to be using 2 smaller pans. If you have a larger cookie sheet, you can do it all in one go. The way I like to do it is with parchment paper, because rolling it out onto a surface and then trying to lift the crackers off of that can be a real pain. So I like rolling it right onto a piece of parchment paper. I cut the paper to the size of my pan so that as I'm rolling it out, I know if I go over the edge, that's going to be too much for my pan. So I know how much I can roll out on this. I'll get it all rolled out nice and flat, cut the crackers, lift the whole sheet, and drop it right into my pan like this. And that way I can throw it in the oven. So our next step is going to be rolling the dough out as thin as we can. So like a 1/16 to an 1/8 inch tops. You want to get it really thin. We're going to roll that out onto this sheet, and then we'll move on to cutting the crackers. Okay, I'm going to take my dough and just start pressing it down onto the parchment paper. And it's going to be hard because it just came out of the fridge, so it's not like it's going to be super soft and easy to work with. So once we get that started, I can move to using the good old-fashioned roller here and really just roll this out. And like I said, I'm going to try to get it as thin as I can. Now I took my dough and broke it in halves because I know I have to use 2 pans, but like I said, if you have a larger pan, just get a larger piece of parchment paper. This should fit a standard size cookie sheet, and I think those are 9 by 13, 9 by 14, about that size. The one I'm going to be using is a little bit smaller, so. But if you roll it out and it's too big for the parchment that's here, that's fine. We'll just cut around the edges, roll that dough back up, stick it in the fridge, and do a second batch. So let me get this all rolled out, and then I'll show you a close-up of how thin this is and what it looks like after it's all rolled out. Okay, now that we finished rolling it out real thin, it's not paper thin, but it's awfully close. I'm going to neaten up the edges just a little bit. I'm using a pastry wheel here, or a pastry cutter. Gives me kind of a zigzag edge, almost like pinking shears. And then I'm going to take the pieces that I'm cutting off, and those will just go on my secondary tray. If you're doing it all on one tray, you can neaten up the edges if you want. It's not necessary. I kind of have a little OCD problem. And I'm going to do this just to neaten things up for me. It makes me feel a little better. Okay. Alright, and this will be my first tray. So I have a square here of dough that's rolled out super thin. Cheez-It by design, if you buy them, are 1 inch by 1 inch square. I'm not going to be that picky, so I'm going to roll. And if you don't have a pastry roller, you can use a pizza cutter, you can just use a knife. However you want to score these, but we're going to pre-cut the crackers before they go in the oven. And I'm going to do rows of approximately 1 inch. And then I'm going to go in the opposite direction and do about 1 inch again. And they're not perfect, but that's okay. They're all going to get chewed up in the end. Okay, and then the next thing that we're going to do, I'm going to use a bamboo skewer, but you can use a toothpick, just break the end off, or you can use any tool. Just poke one hole right in the center of each of these crackers. I'm not sure if this helps in the baking process so that it doesn't balloon up as it's cooking into like a pillow. I think putting this hole in the center of the individual cracker not only makes it look more like a Cheez-It, but I think it does prevent that pillowing of the crackers so that they lay a little bit more flat as they're cooking. And they will blister up a little bit, but that's okay. That just makes them a little bit more crunchy. So let me get all of these perforated like this. I'll show you what they look like, and then we'll load it onto the pan and get them in the oven. And then I'll work on the second batch behind the scenes. But we'll get these baking and then we'll try them out. So the crackers are formed, cut, and perforated. At this point they're ready to bake. Optionally, which I'm going to do, is I'm going to salt the top of these. And I'm just going to dust a little bit of salt over the top. Use the rolling pin, and just with the weight of the rolling pin, press that layer of salt down into the cracker. Just load my parchment paper up into my pan here. It's a lot easier than trying to pick up the dough and get each cracker onto a pan. Then I'm going to take the pan and I'm going to put it in my preheated 375 oven for 15 to 17 minutes. Just keep an eye on them, they'll get golden brown. Usually within 15 minutes, but depending on your oven, it may take a little bit longer. So around the 10 to 15 minute mark, just keep an eye on them. If they start getting golden brown, go ahead and pull them out. And when we're at that point with mine, I'll show you what we've got. Okay. They look finished. It's been 20 minutes for me, so it went a little bit longer, but that could be because it's the wood cook stove and I can't really regulate the temperature. But like I said, keep an eye on them. When they get golden brown and they're kind of crispy, they're going to crisp up as they cool. I'm going to pull these out. I'll put my second batch in and we'll take a closer look. Okay, I'm just going to take these and scoop them into a little bowl here, or a dish or whatever. I'm going to let these cool down for like 10-15 minutes before we do anything with them. Not that they're too hot to pick up and work with, but as they cool, they're going to harden up a little bit and become a little bit more crispy. It seems like if you eat them hot, they're almost a little doughy. So there we go. I still have that one more batch in the oven, and once that's done, I'll get them all scooped up. We'll cool them. We'll pick them up. I'll show you how crispy they are. I'll give them a taste test. And the second batch, instead of using regular table salt, I dusted those with a ground sea salt, so a little heavier on the salt. That was per someone's request. And we'll see how those taste as compared to these. Well, they're all done, and delicious. I think Marilyn had said that this bowl is not going to make it through the night. So this will probably be our snack after dinner. But like I said, you know, the thinner you roll these, the more crispy they're going to be. And I'm not sure if the mic will pick this up, but nice and crispy. And they taste very, very close, at least in my opinion, to Cheez-Its. for a small amount of ingredients, we probably made the equivalent of, I don't know, probably a full box these days, with shrinkflation going on. But yeah, an easy snack to make. Doesn't take really much time at all, not a whole lot of effort. And these will keep probably for, I don't know, I'd say 7 to 10 days before they start getting stale. But like I said, they're not going to last that long. Between the two of us, we'll polish this bowl off while we watch some TV tonight. But anyway, give them a shot. I think you'll like them. It doesn't take much to make these. If you got kids in the house, this is an easy recipe that you can do with the kids. And there's really not a lot that can get messed up. And you can cut these into any shape you want. So if you don't want to cut them into squares, you can cut them into any shape. But like I said, there's a few of them where the hole that I popped didn't go all the way through, and it did pillow up. It does blow up because it's kind of, it's not a pastry dough, but it's pastry-like. So a lot of air gets in there and it does inflate as it cooks. And on the ones that have that obvious hole right here in the center, they don't blow up. They do get airy and crispy, but they don't just swell up. So I'm pretty sure that's the whole purpose of that dimple that you're putting there in the middle. Anyway, I think they're easy. If you're looking for a salt fix. Oh, also one more thing too. Marilyn had the table salt and she had the sea salt. She prefers the sea salt one. She said to her those taste more like the store-bought version. But anyway, if you like the video, if you want to see more like this, go ahead and comment below. Make sure to like the video if it was worth your while. Share it with somebody that you might know who's looking for a decent Cheez-It recipe. And I'll see you in the next video.